If you survive the night in my bed, I'll set you free. That's the deal a desperate outcast takes to save her dying siblings. The Alpha King's fated mate. But the Alpha King isn't just cruel, he's cursed. Every full moon, he turns into something that kills anyone too close. One night locked in his chambers, a silver knife on the table, and a warning. No one survives until dawn. Then it happens. A shock through her blood. Her wolf wakes up after years of silence, and the bond between them ignites, strong enough to crack chains, strong enough to trigger the beast. Now raiders are circling the refugee camp, and dark witches are watching from the woods. The Alpha tries to push her away, but their souls won't let go. So what happens when the only way to break his curse is for him to kneel to the one person he could destroy? The massive oak doors closed behind Kieran's advisors, leaving Haley alone with the most feared Alpha King in recent history. Her hands trembled within the silver chains, the metal burning against her skin. She'd seen him before from a distance, a legend whispered about in refugee camps, a monster who ruled with an iron fist and struck terror into the hearts of every wolf pack. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Kieran Blackthorn stood near the window, moonlight casting sharp shadows across his angular face. His pitch-black uniform highlighted a muscular frame that spoke of decades of combat training. Cold, steel-gray eyes assessed her like she was nothing more than a specimen to be examined. "You understand the terms," he said. Not a question, but a statement. Haley swallowed hard. One night, one impossible night to save Mira and Finn. Her younger siblings were everything, the last connection to the family and pack destroyed years ago. Their recent illness had pushed her to desperate measures, including stealing medical supplies from the most dangerous territory in the wolf kingdoms. "I understand," she whispered. A muscle flickered in Kieran's jaw. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Not quite predatory, not quite human. More like a wounded animal considering its next move. "Remove her chains," he commanded a guard waiting silently by the door. The silver restraints fell away, leaving raw, burned marks on Haley's wrists. She instinctively rubbed them, surprised by the sudden freedom. Most alphas would have kept her restrained, especially an omega like herself from a destroyed refugee pack. "The medicine for my siblings," Haley said, her voice gaining a thread of steel. "You promised." Kieran's laugh was short and without humor. "Worry about surviving the night first, little Omega." The room's temperature seemed to drop. Haley knew the rumors about this Alpha King, how he transformed into an uncontrollable beast during full moons, how no mate had ever survived his curse. Her wolf stirred nervously beneath her skin, sensing something wild and dangerous. But Mira and Finn were counting on her, and Haley Ashwood did not break promises to her family. She met the Alpha King's gaze, refusing to show fear. One night. One impossible night. The servants moved around Haley like nervous birds, their hands trembling as they prepared her for what everyone seemed to consider a death sentence. Their whispers drifted through the steamy bathhouse, each murmured warning sending fresh waves of anxiety down her spine. "No one survives," one young servant girl muttered, just loud enough for Haley to hear. "The last 5 who entered haven't been seen again." Another servant, older and more controlled, quickly hushed her. But the damage was done. Haley's wolf stirred beneath her skin, a mixture of fear and defiance rising with each passing moment. The bathwater was scalding, infused with herbs that made her skin tingle. They scrubbed her thoroughly, washing away the dirt and desperation of weeks spent surviving in refugee camps. Her skin was raw, her body draped in a thin white nightgown that felt more like a shroud than clothing. When Beta Marcus arrived to escort her, His expression was a carefully constructed mask of professional neutrality, but Haley caught the flicker of something deeper in his eyes. A profound sadness, almost pity. "The king is waiting," he said simply, his voice low and measured. The corridors of the royal wing were silent, decorated with ancient tapestries depicting wolfpack histories. Massive stone walls seemed to absorb sound, making each of Haley's steps feel impossibly loud. Marcus walked slightly ahead, his posture rigid, hand instinctively near the weapon at his side. At the massive oak doors to Kieran's private chambers, Marcus paused. For just a moment, something like compassion crossed his features. "Be careful," he whispered, so softly she almost missed it. The doors opened soundlessly, revealing a chamber that was both opulent and stark. Massive windows overlooked a moonlit forest, silver light pooling across intricate marble floors. And there, silhouetted against the window, stood Kieran Blackthorne. He didn't turn immediately, allowing Haley to take in the room. A massive four-poster bed dominated one side, its dark wood and deep crimson bedding suggesting both luxury and potential danger. A large desk sat near the window, and true to his warning, a gleaming silver knife rested conspicuously on its surface. When Kieran finally turned, his gaze was intense, calculating and predatory. "Once these doors lock at nightfall," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the room. "There is no escape until dawn." He gestured to the knife. "If you feel threatened," Kieran continued, "that blade is silver. Use it if you must." The implication hung heavy in the air. A silver blade could disable or even kill a werewolf if struck in the right location. It was both a warning and, perhaps, a strange form of protection. Haley stood perfectly still, refusing to show the terror racing through her veins. Her siblings' faces flickered in her mind. Mira's pale, sickly complexion, Finn's desperate hope. She had accepted this bargain. She would see it through. The last rays of sunlight began to fade, casting long shadows across the chamber. Nightfall was approaching, and with it, whatever fate awaited her in the Alpha King's chambers. The dining table was a polished mahogany masterpiece, set with silver cutlery that gleamed under the soft candlelight. Kieran moved with a predatory grace, pouring deep red wine into crystal glasses while Haley watched, her muscles coiled tight with tension. "Eat," he commanded, but the word lacked the harsh edge she'd expected. Instead, it sounded almost like an invitation. The meal was elaborate: perfectly seared venison, roasted root vegetables, and a delicate sauce that spoke of a kitchen staffed by skilled chefs. Haley's hands trembled slightly as she lifted her fork. She'd been hungry for so long that the sight of such abundance made her almost dizzy. Kieran watched her, his gaze intense but not threatening. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to change color in the shifting light. "You risked everything to steal medicine," he said, not as an accusation, but as a genuine question. "Why?" Haley hesitated. The years of survival, of protecting her siblings, rose like a tide in her memory. She took a small bite of meat, buying herself time. "My siblings," she finally said. "Mira and Finn. They're all I have left." Something shifted in Kieran's expression. A flicker of understanding. Perhaps even compassion. "Your pack?" Her fork clattered against the plate. "Destroyed," she said, her voice flat. "Rogues attacked at night. I was out hunting. By the time I returned..." She couldn't finish the sentence. The weight of her loss hung between them. Kieran said nothing, but his gaze softened marginally. He understood loss, she realized. Truly understood it. As the meal progressed, Haley found herself relaxing slightly. Kieran asked careful questions about her survival. about the refugee camps, about how she and her siblings had managed to stay alive. His curiosity seemed genuine, almost kind. When she reached for her wine glass, her hand was shaking more than usual. The delicate crystal slipped, shattering against the table's edge. A sharp edge sliced her palm, bright red blood welling immediately. "Damn," she muttered, pressing her hand against her dress. To her shock, Kieran was instantly beside her. His movements were fluid, controlled. He took her hand gently, examining the cut with surprising tenderness. "Let me," he said softly. His hands were warm, but she noticed something odd. They trembled slightly. More than that, his eyes, previously a deep brown, flickered with golden undertones. Something was changing. The moonrise was approaching. The moment Kieran touched her wounded hand, something electric sparked between them. Haley gasped, a sudden surge of energy rippling through her body. Her wolf, a part of herself she'd buried deep after her pack's destruction, stirred like a dormant creature awakening from a long, dark hibernation. Kieran froze, his pupils dilated, shifting from human brown to a molten golden amber. "Something's happening," he muttered, more to himself than to her. The air in the room changed. Thick, charged, impossible to breathe normally. "We need to chain me," Kieran said urgently, his voice roughening. "Now, before the moon fully rises." Against the far wall, ornate silver chains hung with deliberate precision. They weren't decorative, they were a prison. Kieran moved with increasing tension, his muscles rigid, sweat beading on his forehead. Haley watched as he approached the chains, his movements becoming less controlled. Each step seemed to require immense concentration. When he reached for the first shackle, his hand was shaking. "Help me," he growled. "Quickly." She stepped forward, her own hands surprisingly steady. As her fingers brushed the silver mechanism, another jolt passed between them. This time it was more than electricity. It was recognition. "Mate," something primal inside her whispered. Kieran's eyes went impossibly wide. "No," he breathed. "It can't be." But they both felt it. The bond crackling to life, ancient and undeniable. An Omega's connection to her true alpha, more powerful than any pack law or personal resistance. Haley's dormant wolf surged forward, years of suppressed instinct breaking through her carefully constructed walls. Her senses expanded. She could smell Kieran's wild, forest-like scent, hear the rapid thunder of his heartbeat, feel the heat radiating from his body. "The chains," Kieran gasped. "I need to be secured before—" But the mate bond's sudden intensity fractured his concentration. His hands, usually so precise, fumbled with the silver restraints. One shackle hung loose, not fully engaged. The moon reached its zenith outside, and Kieran's transformation began. The moon's light sliced through the chamber's tall windows, and Kieran's transformation erupted with a savagery that shook the stone walls. His body twisted, bones cracking and reshaping with wet, horrific sounds that made Haley's wolf instincts scream in terror. The silver chains, designed to restrain the most dangerous alpha, disintegrated like fragile threads. Metal links shattered, raining down onto the stone floor with a musical cascade of broken metal. Where a man had stood moments before, now a massive wolf dominated the room, easily twice the size of any natural wolf, with fur the color of midnight and eyes blazing a toxic, unnatural gold. But these weren't the eyes of a predator hunting prey. These were the eyes of pure, unbridled agony. The wolf, Kieran's wolf, didn't charge. Instead, he began tearing at himself. Massive paws raked across his own flanks, leaving deep furrows in midnight black fur. A sound unlike any natural wolf's cry tore from his throat. Part howl, part scream, pure tormented rage. Haley stood frozen. Her omega instincts warred between two primal commands: run from the obvious threat, or protect her mate. The mate bond thrummed between them, a live wire of connection that made her skin electric with awareness. When the wolf finally turned, his movement was so fast it blurred. One moment he was self-destructing, the next he was facing her. Massive, teeth bared in a snarl that promised violent death. No recognition flickered in those golden eyes. No hint remained of the man who had shared dinner with her, who had shown unexpected gentleness. This was a creature of pure, uncontrolled rage. And Haley understood with sudden, horrifying clarity. This wasn't just a transformation. This was a test. Would she survive? More importantly, would she be forced to kill her own mate to do so? The knife on the nearby table gleamed silver in the moonlight. The moment stretched, tension coiling like a physical weight in the chamber. Haley's heart thundered, each beat a war drum against her ribs. Fear crawled up her spine, the rational part of her brain screaming that she was mere moments from being torn apart by a creature of pure, unbridled rage. But something deeper stirred within her. Her Omega Wolf, dormant for 3 long years since her pack's destruction, suddenly roared to life. The sensation was like liquid fire flooding her veins, burning away fear and replacing it with something primal and powerful. Before she could consciously think, her body began to shift. Bones realigned, skin rippled and stretched. Where moments before a trembling human woman stood, now a sleek silver wolf materialized. Her coat gleamed like polished moonlight, each hair luminescent and fine. Unlike the rough, battle-scarred wolves she'd known in her refugee years, her wolf was elegantly built. Lean muscle beneath a coat that seemed to shimmer with an almost ethereal quality. Kieran's massive midnight black wolf froze. Those toxic gold eyes, previously burning with feral rage, suddenly flickered. Recognition warred with madness. The beast's massive head tilted, nostrils flaring, catching her unique scent. Haley moved with calculated grace. No sudden movements, no threat display. Instead, she lowered her body slightly, ears partially back, a submissive gesture that signaled peaceful intentions. But her submission wasn't weakness. It was a careful communication, a language older than words. Her wolf began releasing calming pheromones, a rare omega ability designed to soothe and stabilize pack dynamics. The chemical signals drifted through the air, complex and nuanced. To Kieran's feral wolf, it would feel like a gentle hand stroking away tension, like moonlight washing away darkness. They began circling each other. Each step was measured, deliberate, a dance as old as wolf-kind itself. Haley maintained eye contact, her silver eyes, now wolf-bright and piercing, never leaving his. She wasn't cowering. She was presenting herself as pack, as mate. Her wolf understood something her human mind was still processing. The mate bond transcended rational thought. Even in this feral state, some part of Kieran recognized her, knew her. The massive black wolf's breathing began to change. The wild, ragged panting softened. Muscles that had been coiled for violence started to relax millimeter by millimeter. Haley continued her careful approach, broadcasting calm, safety, connection. The dance continued, a perilous ballet of survival and instinct. Haley moved with calculated precision, her silver wolf weaving between ornate furniture and towering bookshelves. Each step was a careful calculation, close enough to broadcast her calming pheromones, far enough to avoid the razor-sharp claws that could shred her in an instant. The black wolf's movements were explosive. One moment utterly still, the next a blur of midnight fur and muscle. He would lunge, then pull back, stalk, then retreat. His golden eyes never left her, burning with an intensity that was part rage, part something deeper. "Listen to me," Haley whispered, her wolf's voice a low, melodic sound that carried across the chamber. "I have 2 siblings, Mira and Finn. They're waiting for me." The wolf's ears twitched. Not an attack posture, but something almost attentive. She continued, her voice steady. "Mira loves collecting wildflowers. Even in the refugee camps, she'd find these tiny purple blooms between rocks. Finn wants to be a healer. He's always collecting herbs, always trying to help someone." With each word, she took another careful step. The wolf shadowed her, no longer lunging, but moving with a predatory grace that suggested ownership rather than pure aggression. "We lost our pack 3 years ago," Haley continued, her voice catching slightly. "A rogue attack. One night. Everything gone." The black wolf's head tilted. Those golden eyes, no longer pure rage, but something more complex, seemed to focus on her with an almost human intensity. She realized something strange was happening. Her words were doing more than just creating sound. They were creating a connection. The wolf was tracking her not just physically, but emotionally. "I've been dreaming about golden eyes," she said softly. "For months. Always the same eyes. Watching me. Protecting me." The wolf stopped moving. His massive frame, which had been coiled with potential violence, suddenly went completely still. Those golden eyes locked onto her with such intensity that Haley felt her breath catch. Something was happening. Something beyond simple animal instinct. The chamber, massive and ornate, became their entire universe. Moonlight spilled through high windows, casting silver shadows that made her wolf's coat shimmer. The black wolf's fur absorbed the light, making him look like a creature carved from midnight itself. Her omega instincts hummed. This wasn't just a chase. This was communication. "Would you like me to continue the scene? I can elaborate further while staying true to the specific instructions you provided." Hours passed in their strange, tense dance. Moonlight carved silver paths across the royal chamber's marble floor, casting long shadows that shifted with each careful movement. Haley's wolf form moved slower now, her muscles trembling with exhaustion. The black wolf watched her, his golden eyes never wavering. When she finally stumbled, her legs barely supporting her weight, he made no move to attack. Instead, something extraordinary happened. He approached, not with aggression, but with a careful, almost protective movement. His massive frame, easily 3 times the size of her silver wolf, curled around her body, creating a living shield of midnight fur and muscle. Haley's wolf tensed initially, her survival instincts screaming a warning. But the wolf's body radiated warmth, not threat. His breathing was deep and steady, creating a rhythmic sound that seemed to pulse with an almost hypnotic comfort. As her eyes grew heavy, she pressed against his fur. That's when she first noticed them. The scars. Beneath his thick black coat, her sensitive wolf senses detected a landscape of old wounds. Some were small, barely visible silver lines threading through his fur. Others were deeper, more pronounced, jagged marks that spoke of brutal, repeated injuries. These weren't battle scars. They were different. These were self-inflicted wounds. Her gentle exploration revealed a tragic story. Each scar looked like it had been created by claws, his own claws. Marks of a wolf fighting against himself, tearing at his own flesh in some desperate internal battle. One particular scar caught her attention. It ran along his shoulder, deeper and more pronounced than the others. When her muzzle brushed against it, the black wolf's entire body shuddered. A sound emerged. Not a growl, not a snarl, a howl. But this wasn't a howl of aggression or territorial marking. This was a sound of pure, raw pain. A mournful cry that seemed to carry years of suffering, of isolation, of a profound loneliness that cut deeper than any physical wound. The sound echoed through the chamber, trembling with an emotion so complex and deep that it transcended the boundary between wolf and human. It was a cry of something broken, something that had been fighting an impossible internal war for years. Haley understood, in that moment, that this wasn't just a wolf. This was a being who had been battling his own nature, his own existence, for longer than she could imagine. The scars weren't just physical. They were a map of his internal struggle. Her omega instincts, usually quiet and submissive, rose up with a fierce protectiveness. Whatever had happened to create these wounds, whatever internal battle he had been fighting, she wanted to understand. She wanted to help. Her silver wolf pressed closer, her body radiating a calm, soothing energy. Not challenging, not threatening, just present. The black wolf's breathing slowly steadied. The mournful howl faded, transforming into something closer to a deep, exhausted sigh. And there, surrounded by moonlight and ancient stone walls, the two wolves remained. One silver, one black, bound by a connection neither fully understood, but both instinctively recognized. As the first pale hints of dawn began to silver the chamber's edges, something shifted in the massive black wolf. His form began to ripple, muscles twisting in an unnatural, painful transformation that was neither fully wolf nor human. Haley watched, her silver wolf form tense and alert. The creature before her wasn't completely wolf anymore. Patches of human skin emerged through midnight fur, creating a grotesque, half-formed being that trembled with violent, uncontrolled energy. "No! No!" The words came out strangled, half-growled. "Cannot remember?" His hands, part paw, part human hand, clawed at the marble floor. Golden eyes, still wild but with a terrible, fragmented human awareness, locked onto Haley. "Witch," he rasped. The word came out like a wounded animal's cry. "Morgana. Her revenge." Haley's wolf form remained absolutely still. Something in his broken language suggested a coherence she hadn't expected. This wasn't just a mindless beast. This was a being in profound, desperate pain. "Rejected." Another half-sob, half-growl. "She cursed me. Every full moon. Cannot control." His body continued its horrific transformation. Bones cracked and realigned. Human skin emerged in patches, mixed with midnight fur. The sounds he made were beyond description. Part human scream, part wolf's howl. "Kill me," he suddenly pleaded, his voice switching between a deep growl and a human whisper. "Before I remember. Before I know what I might have done to you." The raw terror in his voice was overwhelming. This wasn't just fear of hurting her. This was a deeper, more personal horror. A terror of his own potential for destruction. "Please," he begged. "End this. End me." But Haley's wolf simply moved closer. Not threatening, not attacking, just present. Her energy was calm, steady, a counterpoint to his violent, chaotic transformation. Her presence seemed to anchor him. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, his violent trembling began to subside. "Cannot remember," he whispered again, but the words were less frantic now, more broken, more human. As dawn's first true light touched the chamber, Haley remained. Her silver wolf form pressed against his half-transformed body, offering something beyond physical comfort. A connection, a promise, that no matter what emerged from this transformation, she would not abandon him. The first rays of dawn crept through the chamber's tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Kieran's eyes flickered open, his body aching with the familiar aftermath of transformation. Muscle memory from countless full moons prepared him for the routine of checking for damage, for blood, for evidence of destruction. But something was different. He was curled around a warm body, a silver wolf. His wolf. Memories fragmented, flashes of moonlight, of desperate struggle, of a voice cutting through his madness. Haley. Panic erupted. He jerked back, his muscular frame trembling. "No," he whispered, raw horror etching every syllable. "No, no, no!" Haley stirred, her silver wolf form shimmering and shifting back to her human shape. Unlike most mornings after his transformations, she looked unharmed, calm, almost peaceful. "You're alive," Kieran breathed, a statement of disbelief rather than relief. Her eyes met his, calm, steady, understanding. "I'm alive," she confirmed softly. The silence stretched between them, weighted with unspoken revelations. Kieran's hands, the same hands that had transformed into deadly weapons just hours ago, now shook uncontrollably. "I didn't hurt you." The question came out like a broken plea. Haley shook her head. "Your wolf protected me. We're mates," she added simply, as if stating an undeniable fact. The word mates landed like a physical blow. Kieran recoiled, his muscular frame pressing against the far wall. The movement was pure instinct. Fear, shame, self-preservation battling in every tense muscle. "No," he growled, more to himself than to her. "No, this cannot happen. I am not safe. I will not condemn you to a life with a monster." His response was visceral, immediate. The vulnerability of moments before vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating alpha king persona. Protection through distance. Protection through rejection. "Our bargain was clear," he said, his voice now steel and ice. "You survived the night. You earn your freedom, and the medicine for your siblings." Haley blinked, surprised by the sudden emotional shutdown. "I want to understand what happened. The mate bond, your transformation." "You will be released immediately," Kieran interrupted, each word precisely controlled. "Beta Marcus will escort you and provide the medical supplies promised." The coldness in his voice was a shield, a wall constructed instantly to protect her from him. From the danger he believed he represented, from the bond that had unexpectedly connected them. His dismissal was absolute, complete. A door slamming shut before any real conversation could begin. Haley felt the rejection like a physical wound, not just a dismissal of her desire to understand, but a complete negation of the profound connection they'd just experienced. The mate bond thrummed between them, a living, breathing thing that Kieran was desperately trying to deny, to cut off, to destroy before it could take root. And in that moment, both of them knew something fundamental had changed, whether Kieran wanted to acknowledge it or not. The refugee camp bustled with renewed energy as Haley distributed the medicine Kieran had provided. Her younger siblings, Mira and Finn, lay on thin blankets, their fevered cheeks now cool and their breathing steady. Relief washed over her, momentarily pushing aside the complex emotions from her night with the Alpha King. Mira's weak hand caught hers. "You look different," she murmured. Haley knew her sister was right. Something had fundamentally changed. Her wolf, dormant for years, now hummed just beneath her skin. alert, aware, powerful. The transformation during that night with Kieran had awakened something primal within her. As she checked on other sick children in the camp, a tension began to build. The air felt charged, electric with an approaching threat. Her enhanced wolf senses, something entirely new to her, picked up sounds and scents that would have gone unnoticed before. Raiders. The first warning came as a distant sound of horses, then shouting. Camp residents began to panic, gathering what little they could. Haley's protective instincts surged. These were her people now, her makeshift pack. "Everyone, stay calm," she called out, her voice carrying a newfound authority. Her wolf pushed forward, giving her strength she'd never experienced before. The silver wolf that had emerged during her night with Kieran wasn't just a random transformation. It was a part of her she'd suppressed for survival. The first raiders appeared at the camp's perimeter. They were rough men, armed with crude weapons, looking to pillage the already struggling refugee settlement. Haley positioned herself between the attackers and the most vulnerable, the sick children and elderly. Her body moved with a grace that surprised her. The wolf inside knew exactly how to protect, how to fight. Where once she would have cowered, now she stood resolute. Each movement was calculated, each defensive stance perfect. As the first raider approached, Haley felt her wolf surge. Not in fear, but in pure protective rage. Midway through the defense, she noticed something odd. Royal guards arriving with supply wagons. They moved with precision, almost as if they had been strategically positioned nearby. Their timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. "By order of the king," one guard announced, helping to repel the raiders. Haley's heart caught. Kieran. Despite his cold rejection, he had ensured her camp's protection. The realization was both infuriating and deeply touching. Her wolf understood what her human heart struggled with. The complex bond they shared wasn't something that could be simply dismissed. The battle ended quickly. The raiders, confronted with unexpected resistance and royal guards, retreated. Haley stood breathing heavily, her newfound strength both exhilarating and overwhelming. As the dust settled, she couldn't stop thinking about Kieran, his rejection, their unexplained bond, the way his wolf had protected her that night, the secrets he carried. Her siblings needed her. The camp needed her. But a part of her, a growing, powerful part, was irrevocably connected to the mysterious Alpha King, who had both saved and abandoned her. The mate bond's pain crept through Haley's body like slow-burning poison. What had started as occasional twinges became a constant, gnawing ache that made even breathing difficult. Her wolf whimpered internally, a constant reminder of the separation from her true mate. At first, she tried to ignore it. The refugee camp needed her. Mira and Finn were still recovering, and her siblings depended on her strength. But with each passing day, the connection grew more intense. Flashes of Kieran's experiences would slice through her consciousness without warning. Moments of raw, unbearable pain that weren't her own. One afternoon, while mending a torn blanket, Haley was suddenly overwhelmed by a vision. She saw Kieran in his study, surrounded by ancient texts and scrolls. His hands were bleeding from what seemed like hours of frantic research. The room was a chaos of scattered books, maps marked with strange symbols, and half-empty bottles of what looked like herbal tinctures. The vision was so real she could smell the musty books and feel the desperate energy of his search. Kieran was hunting for a way to break Morgana's curse, a quest that was consuming him entirely. Another vision hit her later that night. Kieran stood chained in a stone chamber, sweat pouring down his face as he fought against the approaching full moon. The chains were silver, designed to contain the beast within him. But this time she could see the true depth of his suffering. Not just the physical pain, but the emotional torment of a man who believed himself to be a monster. These visions weren't just glimpses. They were a direct connection through their mate bond, showing her the daily hell he was experiencing. A traveling healer arrived at the camp 3 weeks after Haley's return. An elderly woman with piercing green eyes, she moved between the sick with a practiced hand. During a quiet moment, she pulled Haley aside. "You carry a powerful bond," the healer said, her voice low and knowing. "I can see its mark on you." Haley hesitated, then asked about curse-breaking rituals. The healer's eyes narrowed. She spoke of an ancient practice, a ritual that could break supernatural bonds and curses, but it required something profound: the absolute, willing participation of a true mate. "The ritual demands complete sacrifice," the healer explained, "both physical and spiritual. The mate must be willing to share every part of themselves, to literally bind their soul to break the existing curse." That night, Haley wrestled with the decision. Her siblings noticed her restlessness. Finn, now stronger, caught her hand. "Something's wrong," he said. "You're thinking of leaving." Mira was more direct. "You want to go back to him," she stated, not asked. The mate bond's pain was becoming unbearable. Each day apart felt like slow torture. Haley could feel Kieran's own suffering matching hers, a mutual agony that threatened to tear them both apart. Her decision crystallized. She would return to the castle. She would find a way to help Kieran break the curse that had trapped him for so long. The castle looked different from what Haley remembered. Where once it had stood as a symbol of cold, imposing power, now it seemed to vibrate with a sense of barely contained chaos. Guards moved with nervous energy, whispering in corners. The normally pristine corridors showed signs of neglect: scattered papers, overturned chairs, a sense of urgency that felt like a gathering storm. Beta Marcus found her before she could even announce her presence. His hand wrapped around her arm, pulling her into a secluded alcove with surprising urgency. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but there was relief in his voice. His eyes, usually so controlled, betrayed a deep weariness. "The king has forbidden anyone near his chambers. He's preparing for the next full moon." Haley's wolf stirred inside her, a primal awareness of her mate's proximity and pain. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. "Tell me everything." Marcus studied her for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. He spoke quickly, revealing the depths of Kieran's desperation. The Alpha King had been hunting Morgana, tracing every magical rumor, every witch's whisper. He was determined to force her to lift the curse, by any means necessary. "He believes if he can find her, he can make her remove the spell," Marcus explained. "But each failed attempt, each dead end, it's driving him closer to madness." The castle felt like a powder keg of tension. Servants moved like ghosts, avoiding eye contact. The air itself seemed charged with an electric anticipation of something imminent and dangerous. Marcus knew the risk he was taking. Sneaking Haley into the king's private wing was tantamount to treason, but something in her presence seemed to offer a hope he'd almost forgotten existed. "He'll try to push you away," Marcus warned as he led her through a hidden servants' corridor. "He believes protecting you means keeping you as far from him as possible." Haley's resolve was unbreakable. The mate bond hummed between them, a living connection that transcended Kieran's fears. She could feel his torment, his self-loathing, the constant battle against the curse that threatened to consume him. When the massive oak doors to Kieran's chambers opened, the raw energy hit her like a physical force. Books were scattered everywhere, maps covered entire walls, marked with cryptic symbols and desperate annotations. Candles burned low, their wax creating intricate patterns on massive oak tables. And there, in the center of this controlled chaos, stood Kieran. He looked simultaneously powerful and broken. His muscles were tense, his hands marked with cuts from constant research. When he turned and saw Haley, the reaction was instantaneous and volcanic. "No," he growled, a sound that was part human, part wolf. "You cannot be here." Haley stood her ground. "I'm not leaving." The tension between them was electric, charged with months of separation, of unresolved mate bond energy, of deep, unspoken emotions. Kieran took a step toward her, his movement a warning and a plea. "Every moment you're near me is dangerous," he said, his voice raw. "The curse. I cannot control it. I will not risk harming you." But Haley saw beyond his words. She saw the vulnerability beneath his alpha exterior, the wounded soul desperate for connection but terrified of destroying everything he touched. Their confrontation was about to reach a critical moment, a collision of love, fear, and destiny. As Kieran and Haley's heated confrontation reached its peak, the castle's massive wooden doors suddenly burst open with a force that made the stone walls tremble. A figure emerged, wrapped in a swirl of dark magic that seemed to twist the very air around her. Morgana stood before them, her presence both beautiful and terrifying. "How touching," she said, her voice a melodic blend of mockery and fascination. "A true mate bond so powerful it called me across continents." Kieran immediately positioned himself protectively in front of Haley, his muscles coiled like springs. "You are not welcome here," he snarled, the alpha in him rising to challenge the witch. Morgana's laugh was like shattered glass. "Oh, but I'm exactly where I need to be." Her eyes, deep and bottomless, fixed on Haley. "You are the key to breaking the curse I placed on Kieran." The witch's proposal came swift and calculated. She would lift the curse that transformed Kieran into an uncontrollable beast every full moon, but at a price that made Haley's heart stop. Morgana demanded that Haley permanently surrender her wolf, becoming fully human and simultaneously severing the mate bond that connected her to Kieran. "You'll be human," Morgana explained almost gently. "No more transformations. No more pack connections. Just ordinary." Haley felt the weight of the choice. Her wolf was more than just a part of her. It was her survival, her connection to her destroyed pack, her link to Kieran. Yet the opportunity to free her mate from his terrible curse hung tantalizingly before her. Before she could respond, Kieran's roar filled the chamber. "Absolutely not," he declared, turning to face Haley. "I will not allow you to sacrifice yourself. Your wolf is who you are." Morgana watched their interaction with a knowing smile, as if this moment was precisely what she had orchestrated all along. "The curse," she interrupted, her tone suddenly serious, "can only be broken under one condition. Kieran's wolf must willingly submit to another's authority." She looked pointedly at Kieran. "And we all know an alpha's wolf would never do such a thing." The challenge hung in the air, a complex, magical puzzle that seemed to have no solution. The full moon crept over the castle's horizon, casting silvery light through the high stone windows. Kieran's muscles began to tremble, the familiar, painful transformation brewing beneath his skin. Beta Marcus and the royal guards had reinforced the silver chains this time, threading them with the most potent magical restraints known to their kind. Haley stood perfectly still, her human form vulnerable, yet unafraid. Her eyes never left Kieran as the first crackling sounds of bone shifting erupted through the chamber. The silver chains glowed with an intense blue-white light, designed to suppress even the strongest werewolf transformation. But something was different this time. Kieran's transformation fought against the restraints with a primal intensity that shook the entire chamber. Stones rattled in their mortar. The massive silver chains, blessed by ancient pack magic, began to strain and buckle under the raw power of his wolf. Kieran, Haley called softly, her voice calm and steady. Look at me. The emerging wolf was larger than before, midnight black fur rippling with muscles that defied natural anatomy. Golden eyes blazed with a feral intensity that had previously meant pure destruction. But this time, those eyes locked onto Haley with a recognition that went beyond pure animal instinct. She did not shift. She did not run. She stood exactly where she was, dressed in a simple white gown that made her look both fragile and luminous in the moonlight streaming through the windows. The transformation completed with a thunderous roar that would have sent any other being running in terror. But Haley remained motionless, her heartbeat steady, her gaze unwavering. Kieran's wolf was a massive beast, easily 7 feet tall at the shoulder, with muscles that seemed carved from living shadow. Razor-sharp claws scraped against stone floors. His breath came in heated rushes that filled the chamber with a wild, untamed scent. "I see you," Haley said, her voice soft but carrying an unexpected authority. "Not the curse, not the monster, you." The wolf paused. One massive paw lifted, then froze mid-motion. Magical energy began to crackle around them. The silver chains, which should have completely suppressed the transformation, now hung in twisted fragments around Kieran's wolf form. Something about their connection was breaking every magical rule. Haley took one step forward, then another. "You are my mate," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Not my master, not my captor, my equal." The wolf's ears pricked forward. Those golden eyes, previously wild and uncontrolled, now held a depth of emotion that transcended animal instinct. Recognition, understanding. "Submit," Haley said. But the word was not a command of hierarchy. It was a claim, a declaration of their bond, of their shared strength. For a breathless moment, nothing moved. Then, with a movement that seemed to defy everything known about werewolf pack dynamics, the massive wolf slowly, deliberately lowered itself to the stone floor. Not in fear, not in weakness, but in profound, voluntary submission. To his mate. The moment the wolf touched the ground, a magical shockwave erupted through the chamber. Blinding white light consumed everything, magical energy so intense it seemed to tear reality itself. Both Kieran and Haley collapsed, the magical backlash of breaking the ancient curse ripping through their mate bond with devastating force. Consciousness returned slowly, like waves lapping against a distant shore. Haley's eyes fluttered open, her body feeling heavy and strange. Sunlight streamed through ornate windows, casting golden patterns across the royal bedchamber. Her head throbbed, and every muscle ached with a deep, bone-deep exhaustion. Beside her, Kieran lay motionless, his chest rising and falling with measured breaths. His skin looked pale, almost translucent, a stark contrast to his usual commanding presence. A series of intricate magical bandages wrapped around his torso, pulsing with a soft blue light that spoke of powerful healing magic. "How long?" she croaked, her throat dry and scratchy. Beta Marcus, who had been standing guard near the window, immediately approached. 3 days, he said softly. "You and the Alpha King have been unconscious since the curse broke." Haley tried to sit up, wincing at the sharp pain that shot through her body. Something felt different. Not just the physical exhaustion, but a deeper, more fundamental shift. Her wolf felt closer, more integrated, as if a barrier that had always existed had suddenly dissolved. Kieran stirred beside her, his golden eyes opening with a mixture of confusion and something else, a vulnerability she'd never seen in him before. "The curse," he muttered, his voice rough. "It's different now." Beta Marcus looked uncomfortable. The healers are concerned. Your transformations are now connected. Kieran sat up abruptly, tension radiating from his body. Connected how? Haley felt it before she understood it. A strange new sensation where her wolf and Kieran's existed in a delicate balance. She could sense his animal spirit now, not as a separate entity, but as an extension of her own being. You can only shift when I do, she realized aloud. The implications crashed over her like a wave. For an alpha king renowned for his strength and independence, this would feel like a profound weakness. Kieran's face darkened. His hand clenched into a fist, and for a moment, she could see the internal battle raging within him. Pride, anger, fear of being seen as diminished. The council will see this as a vulnerability, he growled. They'll think I'm no longer fit to rule. Haley reached out, touching his hand. The moment their skin connected, she felt a surge of their shared energy. Her calming omega essence intertwining with his powerful alpha spirit. No, she said firmly. They'll see this as something unprecedented. A bond that makes us stronger, not weaker. The next few hours were a blur of healers, whispered conversations, and careful examinations. Magical experts from across the kingdom were brought in, each studying the unique connection between Haley and Kieran with a mixture of fascination and concern. By nightfall, word had spread. The council would convene the following morning to assess Kieran's fitness to continue as Alpha King. The stakes couldn't be higher. They'll challenge me, Kieran said later that evening, standing by the window. Alphas from rival territories will see this as an opportunity to claim leadership. Haley watched him, understanding the weight of his concern. In werewolf society, any perceived weakness was an invitation to challenge. And their new, unprecedented bond would be seen as exactly that. A weakness. Then we'll show them our strength, she replied, a quiet determination in her voice. Together. The council chamber buzzed with tension as Kieran stood before the assembled pack leaders. His hand rested firmly on Haley's lower back, a gesture that was both protective and declarative. The room fell silent when he spoke. I present to you Haley Ashwood. Kieran's voice rang clear and strong. My true mate and future queen. Whispers erupted. Some elder wolves looked shocked, others intrigued. A few of the more traditional council members exchanged worried glances. An Omega, raised in refugee camps, becoming queen? Unheard of. Haley, however, had other priorities. She turned to Kieran, her eyes intense. I need to return to the camp first. My siblings... I'll accompany you, Kieran interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. The journey to the refugee camp was tense. Kieran rode beside Haley, surrounded by a contingent of royal guards. As they approached, something felt wrong. The air carried a metallic scent, blood. Mira and Finn were safe, huddled in their makeshift shelter. But the camp around them told a different story. Bodies of wounded wolves lay scattered, and several tents had been destroyed. An attack, Haley whispered, her wolf rising beneath her skin. Kieran's eyes scanned the destruction, his muscles coiled with barely contained anger. Not just an attack. This was targeted. A wounded elder approached them, his body covered in deep claw marks. Dark wolves, he gasped. Working with witches. Same ones who destroyed her original pack. Haley's breath caught. The connection was no coincidence. Kieran's hand found hers, their unique bond humming with shared energy. For the first time, he didn't try to protect her by pushing her away. Instead, he stood beside her, their wolves synchronizing. We'll face this together, he said quietly. The dark wolves emerged from the surrounding forest. Nearly a dozen of them, their eyes glowing an unnatural crimson. Behind them, a figure Haley recognized from whispered stories. A dark witch, similar to Morgana, her hands crackling with forbidden magic. "Interesting," the witch called out, the cursed Alpha and his Omega mate. Kieran's transformation was different now. Instead of the violent, uncontrolled shift of before, his wolf emerged smoothly, connected to Haley's energy, guided by her calming presence. "Protect the camp," Kieran growled to Haley, "but fight with me." Their attack was synchronized. Where Kieran's strength provided raw power, Haley's strategy and calm directed their movements. She wasn't just an Omega to be protected. She was a strategic partner. The Dark Wolves weren't prepared for this new dynamic. They expected the feared Alpha King who ruled through terror. Instead, they found a leader who fought to protect, guided by compassion. Haley's silver wolf darted between attackers, her movements precise. Kieran's massive black wolf followed her lead, their bond allowing them to anticipate each other's moves perfectly. The witch's magic crackled, dark tendrils seeking to interrupt their connection. But their bond, forged through pain and mutual understanding, was stronger than any external magic. As the battle raged, something fundamental changed in Kieran. He was learning to lead not through fear, but through protection. Not by dominating, but by standing alongside those he was responsible for. The refugee wolves, initially cowering, began to find courage in their leader's united stand. They joined the fight, inspired by Haley and Kieran's example. When the last dark wolf fell, the camp was silent except for heavy breathing and the crackling of dying magical energy. Haley shifted back first, checking on her siblings. Kieran remained in wolf form beside her, no longer a threat, but a protector. The castle bustled with unexpected energy as preparations for the royal mating ceremony began. Servants darted through ornate hallways, carrying silk fabrics, intricate decorations, and whispered rumors about the unconventional Omega who would become their queen. Haley stood before a massive floor-length mirror, feeling completely out of place. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the elaborate gown, a far cry from the worn refugee clothing she'd worn for years. The deep midnight blue silk shimmered with silver threads that caught the light, a deliberate design that honored both her silver wolf and her new royal status. "I look like an imposter," she muttered to herself. Beta Marcus, who had been overseeing the final preparations, chuckled softly. "You look exactly like what you are, the future queen." The transition wasn't easy. Every movement felt watched, every gesture scrutinized. The castle was a world completely different from the refugee camps where survival was the only priority. Here, every interaction was a delicate dance of politics, tradition, and expectation. Kieran understood her struggle more than anyone. He had spent weeks preparing not just for the ceremony, but for her comfort. When he arrived that afternoon, he brought a surprise that would change everything. "Haley," he called from the doorway, "there's someone who wants to see you." Two familiar figures burst into the room before he could finish speaking. Mira and Finn, cleaned up and wearing new clothing, launched themselves at their sister with excited screams. "We're here!" Finn shouted, his thin arms wrapped tightly around Haley's waist. Tears immediately sprang to Haley's eyes. She dropped to her knees, holding her siblings close. "How?" she whispered, looking up at Kieran. He stepped forward, a rare soft smile crossing his typically stern face. "I've prepared a wing just for them. Tutors, healers, everything they'll need. They'll be safe. They'll be family." The castle wing dedicated to Mira and Finn was a marvel. Bright, spacious rooms with large windows overlooking the royal gardens. Bookshelves lined with medical texts and adventure stories. A healing area with the best equipment, specially designed to help manage their ongoing health challenges. "We have our own rooms!" Mira exclaimed, spinning in her new bedroom. "And look, they even have desks for studying." Kieran watched Haley's reaction carefully. This was more than a gesture. It was a promise. A promise that her family would always be part of her new life, not left behind. Later that evening, during a quiet moment alone, Kieran approached Haley with a small velvet box. His hands, typically used for wielding power and commanding armies, were surprisingly gentle. "For you," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate silver moon pendant. Intricate wolf designs were etched around its edge, with a central moonstone that seemed to glow from within. Haley's fingers traced the pendant. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "A promise," Kieran said softly. "We'll never spend another full moon apart." The weight of those words hung between them, a commitment far deeper than any royal ceremony could symbolize. It was a promise of partnership, of understanding, of a love that transcended their individual struggles. Mira and Finn's laughter echoed from their new wing, a soundtrack of hope and new beginnings. The night before their mating ceremony crackled with an electric tension that felt both anticipatory and uncertain. Haley stood by the large windows of Kieran's chambers, her reflection ghosting against the moonlit glass, when a sudden chill swept through the room. Morgana materialized without warning, her presence both regal and slightly ethereal. Unlike her previous appearances, charged with threat and manipulation, this entrance felt different, calculated, but not hostile. Kieran's body immediately tensed, positioning himself slightly in front of Haley in a protective stance. His wolf senses bristled, ready to challenge any potential threat. "I'm not here to fight," Morgana said, her voice calm and surprisingly melodic. "I'm here to explain." Her emerald eyes, ancient and knowing, shifted between Kieran and Haley. The witch carried herself with an understanding that suggested she knew something they did not. "The curse I placed on you," she said, looking directly at Kieran, "was never just about revenge." Haley felt Kieran's muscles coil beside her. His hand instinctively reached for hers, their mate bond humming with protective energy. "I cursed you," Morgana continued, "because the path to your true destiny required suffering. Your wolf needed to be broken to be rebuilt. And more importantly, you needed to find a mate who could truly understand and heal you." Her gaze softened as it landed on Haley. An omega with a silver wolf, rare, powerful, capable of transforming everything. Kieran's grip on Haley's hand tightened. "A prophecy," he said. "Not a question, but a statement." Morgana nodded. "Your children will be the first werewolves capable of shifting at will. No moon dependency, no uncontrolled transformations. A complete evolution of our species." The implications hung heavy in the air. Werewolf transformation had always been tied to lunar cycles, a fundamental limitation of their nature. The possibility of voluntary, controlled shifting represented a revolutionary change. "Why tell us now?" Haley asked, her voice steady. A ghost of a smile crossed Morgana's lips. "Because some destinies are meant to be witnessed, not controlled. My role was never to prevent this union, but to ensure it happened." The witch's admission was both an apology and a revelation. Her earlier actions, the curse, the manipulations, were not pure malevolence, but a complex orchestration toward a larger purpose. "Jealousy and prophecy are strange companions," Morgana murmured, almost to herself. "I loved you once," she said to Kieran, "but not as completely as she will." Before either could respond, Morgana dissolved like mist, leaving behind only the faintest trace of lavender and moonlight. The silence that followed was charged with understanding. Kieran turned to Haley, his golden eyes reflecting a vulnerability she had never seen before. "A prophecy," he said softly. "Our children," she responded, squeezing his hand. As the moon rose outside, casting silver light across the chamber, they stood together, not in terror like their first moonrise, but in anticipation of something miraculous. The full moon hung low and luminous, casting a silvery glow over the royal grounds where both packs gathered. Refugees and nobility stood side by side, a testament to Haley and Kieran's transformative union. The traditional mating platform, an ancient stone circle surrounded by towering pine trees, gleamed with ceremonial markings, intricate symbols of wolf heritage etched into its surface. Beta Marcus stood as ceremony master, his deep voice carrying across the assembled wolves. Haley stood beside Kieran, her white ceremonial gown a stark contrast to the dark formal attire of the Alpha King. Her siblings, Mira and Finn, watched from the front row, their eyes wide with pride and wonder. The mate bond between Haley and Kieran pulsed visibly, a shimmer of energy that connected them, visible even to those without supernatural sight. Where once they represented two opposing worlds, a refugee Omega and a feared Alpha King, they now stood as a unified force. As Marcus began the ancient bonding ritual, Kieran's hand clasped Haley's with a possessiveness that was both protective and tender. Their wolves stirred beneath their human skin, sensing the momentous occasion. "By the moon's witness and pack law," Marcus intoned, "we bind these mates. Kieran Blackthorn, Alpha King, do you accept Haley Ashwood as your true mate, to lead beside you, to protect and honor?" Kieran's response was immediate and unwavering. "I accept." When Haley's turn came, her voice rang clear and strong. "I accept." The moment the words were spoken, something extraordinary happened. Their wolves emerged simultaneously, Kieran's massive black wolf and Haley's sleek silver wolf materializing in perfect synchronization. They moved as one, circling each other in a dance of unity that left the assembled pack breathless. The transformation was unlike any traditional wolf shift. Their wolves moved with unprecedented coordination, their movements mirroring each other's with mathematical precision. Where Kieran's wolf had once been a source of terror, now it moved with controlled grace, perfectly balanced by Haley's calming presence. Elders in the crowd whispered. Never before had they witnessed such a seamless mate bond, such perfect wolf synchronization. The refugees who had once feared Kieran now saw him as a protector. The nobility who had viewed Haley as an outsider now recognized her strength. As the wolves completed their ritual circle, they merged back into human form, Kieran and Haley standing naked but unashamed, their bond radiating power and unity. The celebration that followed was a blend of traditional wolf ceremonies and the hope of a new era. Feasts were prepared, traditional songs sung, and the two packs began the process of true integration. Months passed. Haley adapted to her role as queen with the same resilience she had shown surviving refugee camps. She implemented programs supporting displaced wolf families, transforming the kingdom's approach to those without pack protection. Her siblings thrived. Mira began advanced medical training, her healing skills recognized throughout the kingdom. Finn discovered a talent for diplomatic negotiations, becoming a crucial bridge between different wolf factions. On a crisp evening months after their mating, Haley and Kieran stood on the castle balcony. Her hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, a secret not yet announced, but already humming with supernatural potential. The full moon rose, no longer a harbinger of fear, but a beautiful reminder of the night that had transformed their lives forever.